Hi everybody, my name is Aaron and I am the Weekend Modder, and today I'm excited to be here and tell you about a new project that I have become aware of recently called the PicoFlasher. And the PicoFlasher is a Raspberry Pi Pico based Xbox 360 NAND reading writing device. So if you're familiar with the Raspberry Pi ecosystem, you might have in your head that those are $25, $30 Linux computers. This is a new device just released last year, not too long ago. It's one of the latest devices they have, and it's just $4 and is basically an Arduino competitor. So yeah, that's right. For $4, you can read and write your Xbox 360 NAND, and I want to know if it's going to displace the NandX or the JRP or the Matrix Flasher. So I've played with it, I've worked on it, I've done a console with it, and I'm going to tell you about it. Alright, so the first thing I want to call your attention to is over here at weekendmodder.com, the main informational site where I have all my guides and stuff. You can also now find under the miscellaneous column this PicoFlasher info page. And on this PicoFlasher info page, you've got a summary of what I just talked about what this thing is, a $4 Pi, and that we can use it to read and write NANDs. But the very first thing I want to call your attention to is the GitHub of the guy who put this out there. I just really love that this community is still so open and supportive and working with each other and stuff. And so I've sent this guy a donation and tried to get him some more consoles and stuff. But I really think that you guys should pop over here and take a look at the sponsor the project links. If you can send him $5-10, if you can make a recurring donation, that would be awesome. This project definitely would not have happened without this repo. I did not do this. I do not want credit for this. All I did was take what this guy has done and try to summarize and make it understandable and that sort of thing. So I'm nothing other than some dude who made a video. Come show this guy, Balika011, on GitHub some love on this one. At the very least, sign up for a GitHub account and star the repo. That sends a strong signal that this thing is appreciated, and if you can afford to kick a buck or two his way, please do so. All right, so back to the nitty gritty of here. What's going on? So the Pico is, as I said, a $4 Raspberry Pi that we can use to read fat Xbox 360 motherboards, Trinity Xbox 360 motherboards, and Corona 16 megabyte Xbox 360 motherboard NANDs. The only console this isn't going to read and write the NAND on are going to be those 4 gig Coronas that require that special eMMC interacting reading, whatever, right? So we've already got worked up diagrams for the FAT, for the Trinity, and for the Corona already posted and ready to go. And a couple of other little things on this page that you might find useful are the link to this little PicoFlasher zip file. So this little zip file has copies of these images and diagrams, but then it's also got a couple little extra things here. So we've also got a JRunner exe and this PicoFlasher UF2. So just the next section in this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare the PicoFlasher, or rather, how to make a Pico, a Raspberry Pi Pico, into a PicoFlasher, right? You have to load this firmware onto it, and you could download it from the GitHub and compile it and that stuff, but this is a pre-compiled file that's ready to just go. The JRunner exe here is a replacement JRunner that you have to drop into an existing JRunner install, and it's got hacked in support for the Pico ready to go. Now these are both beta level files, man. They are not supported. Nobody is going to cry for you if you brick your console with this stuff. I've literally done one console with this so far. I've done one Trinity, no more. So there could be weird bugs. It's early stage at this point. However, there is really active community support working towards kind of rolling this into full-blown JRunner and kind of more finalizing on the firmware and stuff. So I do think that it's ready for people to start using and testing out, but you've been warned. All right, so let's move on to setting up the Pico to actually perform a NAND read-write with it. There is a new device for reading and writing Xbox 360 NANDs. So if you're a modder, if you've ever done a 360, you've probably seen one of these devices here. We've got a NandX, an X flasher, a Matrix SPI flasher, a JR programmer. All of these in their own right are fine devices, but today we are here to talk about a cool new release, the Raspberry Pi Pico, and a project that's been published that allows us to use this device to read and write the Xbox 360 NAND. So, what the heck are we going to do? We are going to use a cool open source project that leverages this Raspberry Pi Pico to interface with those SPI headers and read the NAND of this console. So the first thing that I'm going to do, because of how the Pico is set up and works, is I'm actually going to put some pin headers on this guy, and I'm going to set it up so the pin headers are going to go into my board downward because the labels are on the back side here, you can see. So I've actually got a little breadboard here that I've gone ahead and set up some pin headers in. This is a cool way to make sure that you get everything on straight and stuff, but it's definitely not a requirement. Additionally, what you're seeing me do here is you could totally do just by either direct wire to the points. There's no reason that you have to do what I'm doing here. If we look back at that wiring diagram, you can see that we really only are using these few pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down the right side here. All right. All right. So now we have a Pi Pico with some pin headers on it, and I can pull this out of the board. We get a nice, pretty straight line, whatever. So I am going to move on to the software aspect of loading this guy up. Alright, so to set up your Pico as a PicoFlasher, I'm going to direct you back to that information miscellaneous page under PicoFlasher info on weekendmodder.com and snag that PicoFlasher zip file, and then have a look at the contents in there. And the 2 bits that we're going to use right now are the PicoFlasher.uf2 firmware file and then the JRunner exe itself. Now, if you take a look at the README, we've got a link in it to the Real Mod Scene thread where Josh of Octal's Console Shop posts and maintains the latest version of JRunner. Shout out to Josh for being awesome and maintaining JRunner basically solo. I think just super cool that it's still getting updates after all this time. So what you do need to do is grab the entire full JRunner package, download, install it, run it like normal, right? And then inside the zip file on my website, you've got this jrunner.exe. You want to drop that in on top of and overwrite the JRunner that you downloaded that's the latest version. Now here's the thing, when you go to launch this, you're probably going to get a pop-up that says, do you want to update? Just like this, right? I don't know for sure that the latest version has this PicoFlasher support hacked into it yet. I know for sure that the version in the zip file does. So I'm going to say no to the update because I want to specifically run the version that's from this zip file. And the reason I want to set this up first is because much like the NandX, the X Flasher, the JR Programmer, with support built into it, you'll actually get a little pop-up of the PicoFlasher logo when you connect it. So what's going to happen here, or what we expect to have happen, is that I can plug in the PicoFlasher while holding down this one button on the thing, right? It has this boot selector button. This puts it in basically firmware programming mode, right? So I'm going to press and hold that button down simultaneously while plugging in the USB. Then I can release the button. And what you'll notice back on my desktop is that I now have this Rpi Pi2 drive, right? And it's got a couple of little files that kind of stay built into it. But what we want from this guy is we want to drag and drop that PicoFlasher.uf2 file onto this drive. So we've got the PicoFlasher subfolder here, and we've got the PicoFlasher.uf2 file. So literally I'm just going to drag this file from where I unpacked that zip onto that USB. And here's the cool thing, it's going to automatically go away, disconnect itself, and then look at that right in the background. Now we have that PicoFlasher logo pop up in JRunner. Now you don't have to reprogram it every time you use it or anything, and in fact if I unplug it and then I'd plug it back in not holding down the boot selector button, right? I'm just going to go right back into Pico mode or PicoFlasher mode, and you can see I get that logo back in JRunner. So now I have successfully flashed my Raspberry Pi Pico to be a PicoFlasher, and we're ready to wire it up to a console and read a NAND. Let's go. What I'm going to do is use these little DuPont cables. So if you're looking for these DuPont cables or just the standard little like pin connectors, you can get them in female to female, male to male, or then female to male like these are. So these are pretty ideal for our circumstance because I can solder this in onto the console and we can connect this in and disconnect it from the Pico as necessary. So we know we're going to use these few bottom pins down here. So what I'm actually going to do is work first on the console. So I've got the console broken down and I've got the pin headers, ran a scratch pin over them, and so what I'm going to do is just solder in each of these, get those all connected up, and then we'll connect the correct ones onto the Pico. Alright, now that these guys are all stuck on there, we can kind of work backwards and connect these female ends onto the Pico. Alright, so I'll provide a pinout and diagram and stuff for this, but I've connected per the ordering on the GitHub and stuff, all the connections to the Pico, and they're soldered onto the motherboard here. Alright, we got the Pico wired in, we got it connected via USB, we got standby power on the console. So I am going to go ahead and hit up the NandX. Let's see, can it identify it? Jasper 16 megabytes, so the little question mark seems to work. What if we do a read NAND? Holy shit, look at that thing go! Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is a Raspberry Pi Pico reading the NAND on a Trinity 16 megabyte console. That would be this wiring diagram that we just did. So yeah, just like you read it, you can write the console. I can write an ECC file. So Yeah, I think it's an awesome little programmer, a great alternative to somebody who only maybe has a matrix flasher. Now, some of the downsides are going to be that it can't currently program glitch chips if you're still doing an install that requires that. However, with the advent of some new glitch techniques, you may not need a glitch chip moving forward here. So it could be a really solid solution for those who just need a way to read and write with their NAND super cheaply. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos to come. Thanks.